We were founded about 25 years ago when organic was still in a very emergent state, shall we say. We are a national organization, and our mission and our vision really have persisted over time. We want to foster or encourage improvement and widespread adoption of organic farming. And what we're hoping ultimately will happen, what our vision is that we will be the leading form of agriculture in the United States. So that is a lofty goal, and we're happy to continue to aspire to that and work on ways to make that happen. So how do we do that? We do that in 3 different ways. We focus on research and funding, both directly funding research, and also conducting research ourselves that's going to be both relevant and responsive to organic farmers and their needs. We work with education. Here you're seeing this R&E connection, and sharing these research results, making sure that research-based information gets out to farmers who can use it. So sharing that. None of our projects none of the fruits of our projects that we fund will ever be licensed or patented. That is something that we make very clear to people that receive grants from our organization. But we also encourage colleges and universities. It's been more universities until this point, but we're looking at colleges too, to be more active in terms of organic research, organic training, organic education. And I think we've seen in the last 10 years quite a number of the land-grant universities certifying acreage, offering organic classes, which interestingly attract not just agriculture majors, but attract majors from outside the university too. Liberal arts majors want to learn about organic agriculture. Physicists want to learn about organic agriculture. There's a great attraction there. And so we feel that it's important to recognize those universities who are doing a good job and encourage more of that. And then advocacy, which is a very limited form of advocacy based on what we're finding in research results and giving a credible voice, a very measured voice, and providing evidence for policy changes. Frequently that is advocating for more federal funds to go into funding organic research to make possible all of the work that's happening at the universities. For example, USDA finally has a couple of, albeit small compared to conventional agriculture, funding pools directly and completely for organic projects. And so there are funding resources available, and you'd be amazed at how access to funding makes a faculty member's work credible. If your peers at the university find out that you were able to help fund some graduate students, or you landed a $700,000 project, 3-year project to do an agronomic study on organic, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, that has a little bit more prestige. We don't think you're as crazy as we thought you were before. And that's Klaus Martins. He is another board member at OFRF, as is Steve McCaskill, who I understand is certified by OCIA. He's an incoming board member from Missouri, so we're glad to welcome Steve on board. Let's see what the next slide has to show us. So we have been supporting, oh, and I don't know why that little box is on there. We have been supporting, by direct funding, organic research projects, fairly small in terms of what we're able to afford, a year at a time, up to $15,000. We've funded over $3 million in the past 25 years and 325 projects. And I'll give you just, that's a map of where the projects have been. Some of us in the Midwest board members look at California and say, that's a little heavy out there on the West Coast. The organization was born in California and has a lot of support and activity in California, which is why there's a little bit more activity there. But certainly there have been projects throughout the United States and even up in Canada. Next. And how we've gone about this is the majority, the blue bars show how we've distributed our funds. The majority of that is the larger bar, which is research funding and funding research projects. But we have also funded some education projects and outreach efforts to put together courses, to put together tours, to put together trainings and workshops. So that those have gone hand in hand. And the red bars that are even smaller really emphasize the active role that we insist that farmers play in these projects. So when our committee, which is reviewed by a majority of farmers, our board in fact is majority farmer, when they look at those projects, they say, how are farmers involved in this work? Not just a faculty member wants to use 3 acres of your farm, but have the farmers been engaged in identifying what the problems are? Have they been engaged in figuring out what kinds of solutions we're going to compare or try, in looking at the results, in helping get the word out? So the majority of projects have farmers on their advisory teams. They conduct research on farms, and we insist that that research be on certified organic land. That's really important to us. Sometimes they're on the research team. That's the third bar. I'm moving from left to right. They help with evaluation. They also help with dissemination and getting the results out. Next. So I'm going to give you just a snapshot of a few things so you can see what we've been up to. This is Frank Kutka, who has been involved with North Dakota State University, the SARE program in the Dakotas, and now is very involved with Northern Plains Sustainable Ag Society. And we funded Frank to do a part of his project on reducing GMO contamination of corn. And he is breeding corn varieties that will be hostile to GMO pollen. And he's using non-GMO techniques. He's not using genetic engineering or genetic modification. It's classical, traditional plant breeding. But he is developing varieties of corn that will reject GMO pollen to prevent contamination for organic farmers and reduce that as a financial risk and a financial worry. So that's Frank. Let's see who we have next. Oh, and this is Jonathan Spiro, who is a farmer, and he has been developing sweet corn varieties, open pollinated sweet corn varieties that will never be patented, that are available on the open market, and that are sugary enhanced, so that farmers have an option for growing sweet corn that has been specifically bred to prosper in organic systems, and consumers have this option in the marketplace of this delicious corn that is organic seed and has been bred in organic systems. And he's in Oregon. Let's see who else we have. One more, and this is Kevin Murphy, who is a crop breeder at Washington State University, and he has been working with barley and breeding barley varieties, nutritious and delicious. And he has even engaged the White House pastry chef in helping do some taste tests and things. So it is a program that has had a far reach and has reached its tentacles for organic into the White House kitchens. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And let's go on. So we have been engaged in developing what we call a national organic research agenda. And that involves collecting information from a lot of sources and consolidating it to encourage decision makers to use it. Can we see the next slide? We last did this as an organization in 2007 and published the results, and basically it was like a big, you know what an ear trumpet is? In the olden days when the old British women, I can tell you through my ear trumpet. And it was a very old-fashioned hearing aid with a big bell at one end and it channeled sound in. And that's really what we did to find out what organic farmers' challenges, priorities, and needs, and really demands were, and to consolidate those to do it in a very organized, credible way. One of our watchwords is credibility. And so we did that for 2007, and we're finding out that that national research agenda really has shaped some of the projects and some of the research efforts that have gone on across the country. We've got evidence of that. And we thought it was high time to update that. So we have been involved in that process, and in fact, it may have involved some of you. Our staff and board members conducted 8 farmer and researcher listening sessions around the United States to just hear about what the challenges were, what were on people's minds, so that they could listen kind of across different regions. We also did a survey that was distributed to all U.S. certified organic farmers. We used the NOP list. Anybody who was on the list received an email with an invitation to participate in the survey. And people that didn't have an email, we sent a postcard and said this opportunity is available. You know, you could do it from home, you could do it from a library, you could do it from a friend's house, but we sought input. We had over 1,000 organic farmers provide information about what they were facing, what was on their minds, what their priorities were. And they ranged from anywhere from 1/10 of an acre of certified organic up to 20,000 acres. You know, so this really ran the gamut. And as I say, they ranged from brand new organic farmers to old hands. Next, please. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek. We haven't finished, well, and I say we, I kind of mean they, because I don't have to do this, but the data crunchers haven't quite finished looking at all of the subtleties in the data and the categories, and looking at regions and looking at ages and genders and what's on people's minds. But I can give you a sneak preview, and that's what I'm going to do today. So perhaps this will come as no surprise right now that soil health was at the very top nationwide of organic farmers' interests and concerns, particularly soil health. Almost 75% of them listed that as a high priority for organic research. And I have found it, I don't know if you have too, I have found it fascinating in the last 2 years as I read the general farm magazines and papers that come into our house about how soil health, soil biology have really taken off throughout agriculture as something that farmers are very interested in. And I think we started that, really understanding about soil being the living foundation of what we grow, of our crops, of our livestock, of our food, all goes back to the soil. So that is definitely top priority. Also, I think this will not surprise you because on every survey I have ever seen or ever done in my job at the Department of Agriculture, weed management and better weed management strategies are also rated as a real need. And that was universally across the country very true. So we had open-ended questions about what types of weeds were the most pernicious. And we actually talked about 2 of these that show up here yesterday at the R&E committee in terms of Canada thistle, at least in my part of the country it is, field bindweed in some other areas, and in the South has its own particular weed needs. And so one of the advantages of looking at these things regionally is we can figure out what the differences are region to region in terms of what kinds of efforts and investment we need. So some of the soil health questions that people asked in the surveys or that people posited, how does active soil biology relate to reducing erosion? What's the relationship there? We get dinged all the time by people that criticize organic farming as just, oh, it's just erosive. Oh, they just erode the soil. Well, the truth is very much more complicated and intricate from that, and it's not just the physical properties of the soil, but the biological. Finding products and sources I can trust to build my soils and at affordable costs. Some farmers by nature want to or have to be more reliant on purchased inputs, and others don't. I'm lucky that I'm a dairy farmer. I have a great source of organic matter and minerals and things. There are parts of the state of Minnesota, is the one that I know best, where there's very little livestock on the landscape, and that can be a real challenge for our organic producers. Here, the question now, does livestock manure affect soil biology? And then lots of questions about food safety from that. And what are the practices that will improve soil carbon, soil organic matter, water holding capacity, so important in the drought situations and so important in the excess moisture and flooding situations, both ends of that spectrum, and biology. Other high priorities, and I'm reading these because I have been sitting in the back of the room, so I know how tiny this print is. Fertility management, nutritional quality and health benefits of organic food. And I thought this was very interesting because I also survey organic farmers in Minnesota. I try not to do it very often because, God, we get a lot of surveys, don't we? Don't this time of year, like every week, don't you have another survey in your mailbox? My husband throws them away, and sometimes I dig them out and try to do them myself. But in Minnesota, this is on our farmers' minds too, is nutritional studies on the quality and the nutrition of organic food. They think that's very important for themselves to know, but also for the consumers to understand. And that has been under-researched, that there's not good information about that. So I thought it was really interesting to see that show up as a priority here nationwide. Insect pests, water management, like I say, both extremes of water management, disease management, pollinator health. That was a particular interest in the north central region. And certainly would be in fruit and vegetable areas where pollination is king and pollinators are needed. And then also the economics and marketing organic products. Breeding. Breeding is a topic that I think has really been emerging. There's been so much good work done by organizations like the Organic Seed Alliance in looking at breeding for organic systems. And this was for crops and for livestock. And it was for fruits and vegetables, and it was for grains and oil seeds across the gamut. Some people are interested in disease resistance and breeding for better disease resistance. Quality and availability of seed through breeding programs and propagation programs. And then I have concerns that my organic crops and seeds may get crossed with GE varieties because of wind or transfer. Big issue here in the Midwest. Next. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges by region. And for our regions, it was really simple to use the same regions as SARE does, as the Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program does. And so you can kind of quibble with how this is done, and is the state really in the north central, is it in the southern? But this is how we did it. We divided the country into 4 chunks: northeast, southwest, and north central. Is there anybody here from northeast part of the country? No? Okay. How about the south? Anybody down in that southern region? Where are they? Eating their grains. The west, anybody here from western states? I know there's Montana's here, and where are you from?
Colorado.
Colorado, excellent. Do you know Don LaRoe, an organic flower grower in Paonia?
I know Paonia, I don't know the name though.
All right, I'll hook you up with Don. Organic flowers, all the rage. And North Central, then I guess the rest of you must be in the North Central states. Yes? And I don't know where the rest of you are from. Evidently you're all under rocks. So let's start with North Central then and spend most of our time there.